Hey guys, it's Evan Pardue with Underhill Bonsai, and today I'm here with Guy Guidry. How's it going, Guy?
It's going very good.
Awesome.
Happy to be here.
Yep, and today we're going to be working on this narrow leaf ficus. It is a very big tree, it's a very nice tree, and it is severely what were we going to say, like just
It's severely root bound.
severely
I'm
root
going to
bound.
say 6 years.
6 years root bound. But before we work on it, we want to know the history of this tree real quick.
Well, how am I supposed to know?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, it's got a good history. I mean, all my trees, every bonsai has history. And this particular tree was a group, I think it was 30 trees that were field grown, along with those green island ficus.
Mm-hmm.
So Mr. Tyner, passionate about bonsai, with deep pocketbooks, bought fields of trees. And he basically was the guy that kind of put me into business. He kept buying trees. I was like, I wasn't ready for this responsibility. But before you know it, I had 30 of these, this size.
Yeah.
And it really hasn't grown. It's probably grown a couple inches because it's been in a bonsai container the whole time. But it was a group of really good trees that I believe Mike Cortrette from Florida and Mike Rogers, two Mikes, found these trees because when everybody knew that Calvin was looking for, he wanted to build a collection, a personal collection, everybody was bowing down to him. When he'd come into town, everybody would get their best trees out because they knew they had a very good possibility, an opportunity to sell the trees, and he was buying fields. And so lucky for me, Calvin loved me and wanted to see me get into the business.
Yeah.
He liked the kind of work I was doing. I worked personally just for him for about 3 years, just at his house, just working on all the trees. And so that's one of them.
Yep.
I can't tell you where the rest of them are. I can tell you where maybe 3 are, but I sold them. But it's easily a 50-year-old tree.
Mm-hmm.
It's very deceiving. Tropical trees take on aging antiquity faster than most trees. They grow so fast. They're very vigorous trees. And so I've had the tree, and as you can see, I try to maintain my trees to a certain level. None of my trees are ever show ready. And you know that, Evan. That's why this tree's here, so you can make it show ready.
Yeah, so we can get it to that point. And it starts with this repotting and trimming it back, getting back to primary branches. I'm assuming that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, and so why do you think we have to repot it? Because you can see the tree showing signs of decline. I mean, just look right here. If you
got
can
a weak
see,
section in that
there's
branch.
a weak section, and it's really not because it wasn't getting sunlight, but it's because there's not much soil in this pot. This pot, and the reason we need to repot this tree is because it's all wood. If you can imagine just putting wood in a pot, that's all wood. That does no work for the tree. It supports some of the roots.
But it's not fibrous roots.
They're not fibrous roots, and they don't do jack for the tree. They just take up space. And so in the same pot, after we root prune this tree, I think we probably will have about 80% more soil available to the tree so that it can flourish for the next several years. And it's like, I'm negligent. I wouldn't go 6 more years before repotting. It's just, I do it all the time though.
Yeah, it's whenever we get time for all these big trees, like you're saying, but that's why we're taking on the task of getting some of these trees refurbished and getting them better, like you said, ready for the next generation.
It's restoration time.
Yep,
and so these trees are perfect, man, for you, dude. Look at this. I mean, a lot of people, they want to check, like bonsai people, they say, oh, do I need to water my tree? And they stick their finger in the soil and go down. Well, it's not even a possibility. This is all wood. So if you look at it, that this is a beautiful, these roots, this nabari, without all this craziness, crossing roots, fusing roots, solid wood that gotta get rid of. So it's really, you're going to think that, wow, what we're going to do is got to be so traumatic to the tree. It's got to be. I mean, we're cutting off 90% of the roots.
Yeah.
It's all about making a tree. We're getting ready to prune it. We can keep it the same size.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good twigging, or we could make it a lot smaller. So something that Evan, you should look at. Let's look at. Or is there anything about the superstructure, any exceptionally straight lines? Because if we're going to defoliate it, we can make a whole new canopy.
Yeah.
And where we want it, but it's a sacrifice. Like, come on, it's just like the trident maple outside that we pruned a while back. It's much smaller, but it's already compact again and happy.
So I'm assuming from what you're telling me there is that if I see a straight section like this, I'm safe to bring it back in where I can see those nodes. So for instance here, can you guys see that?
How about this before you do it?
Yeah, go ahead.
So every line, so if the line is this long and then the next where it divides is shorter, it's got to be done like the golden rule of thirds, Fibonacci, to where it's a little bit longer. But this is going to give us an opportunity. It's a full canopy, and maybe to create some negative space between the branching, and so create individual pads instead of just one big canopy. And so when you're looking at it, like that's a lot of beautiful twigs. And guess what? I'd rather have a beautiful pad here and just like a bad haircut. In 3 weeks, a bad haircut doesn't look so bad, you know? It grows out.
And with tropical trees, when they're repotted this season, this is early summer, by the way. In Louisiana, we got a hot spell pretty quick.
It's summertime?
It's basically summertime, yeah.
No, when's the first day of summer?
It's not here yet, but Louisiana, we're already hitting like 90 degrees.
Okay, it's summer.
Yeah, yeah. I know you're doubting me, but trust me, I felt the heat wave. Whenever it is summertime here, well, and we're early summer at basically what's going on, is defoliating this tree and repotting it and giving it more root space for more fibrous roots will cause it to spring into action, and we can get leaf replacement on these branches a lot faster than you would assume.
Right, yes.
So that's what we want for recovery, but we have to treat, I've heard you say this the other day, we have to treat every part of this tree equally, so we can't leave one section of it unpruned.
Every terminal needs to be pruned. One easy way Vaughn would explain it would be that what is a leaf? Vaughn Banting, my teacher, would be if you cut a leaf off, the information that's behind in that node is no longer information for a leaf. It has to be a branch with many leaves, and that's how you get this ramification. And at the same time, sometimes trees, they like to be neglected and overgrown. It gives them more vigor and vitality. Because some trees, look, bonsai trees are subjected to very harsh treatments. Just the fact that they're in pots, and if you live in Southeast Louisiana, well, man, how do you even keep a tree alive in Southeast Louisiana in a pot? It's like it's still, I still don't really understand how it's
possible for us to have bonsai for as long as we do.
But these techniques, I mean, even though I can just say all day long how negligent I am as far as repotting goes, and other parts of bonsai, the fact is that I always try to maintain just a halfway healthy tree, and by letting them always be overgrown to some degree, they have the vigor that's necessary to stay in that realm, the world of bonsai.
So we were discussing the Latin name of this tree a second ago, and it's a heated debate on what this tree is called.
It's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of. It's called Repotting ficus. You would call it salicifolia, narrowleaf. If we would just stick to Latin names, we'd be good.
Well, they've changed the Latin name on this tree a few times.
They changed the Latin name?
Yeah, a few times now. And I can't remember what the most recent rendition on it was. And I'm sure if people are watching this section of the video, you can go down in the comments and let us know.
They're going to be insulted. Don't be insulted. Yeah. I recognize this tree as salicifolia.
Salicifolia.
No, Neurofolia. That's all I'm going to say. They're all the same. Whether it's fat, long, whatever, I'm still calling it a neurofolia.
Yeah.
Nobody can make me call it salicifolia.
Well,
it's never going to happen.
Well, there's also the other thing
Unless
too.
Evan says so.
Well, I don't know. I'm not that picky about it right now. But I mean, there's also this other thing too, where I can't remember if this is true or not on this particular tree, but these trees didn't really become part of bonsai until like in Florida until like
Yes.
it
No,
was like this is unique to Florida bonsai.
just as Jim Moody,
Yeah.
who had a nursery, he brought from Brazil the Brazilian rain tree to America. Jim Smith brought. Wait, is it Jim Smith?
I think it is Jim Smith.
Yeah, Jim Smith introduced the Nerifolia as great bonsai material to America.
Yeah, so there's history in these trees as far as, I mean, when we think Florida bonsai, this is one of the species that pop out.
And on that note, since this is one of those first trees propagated from the first trees that came in to Florida that Jim Smith brought in to introduce, this is one of the first.
Yep. They just I don't know if it's going to come out this year. I'm not sure about the status on it, but there's a Florida bonsai documentary that's been in process for quite some time now.
What do you mean a documentary?
Like they shot a lot of video footage of a lot of the Florida bonsai artists. And
hell yes.
Them. And so like Eric Weigert's on there, Ed Trout's on there, Mary Madison's on there before. I mean, this was a couple of years ago they started recording this because Mary has since passed, but there's some really awesome footage of her walking around collecting buttonwoods. There's video footage of like Eric working on old giant twisted like bougainvilleas and stuff.
Heck yes.
But we'll see when that comes out. I'm hoping that it'll be this year because they're supposed to do a big announcement at the convention this coming weekend actually. At the time of this recording of this video, that would be was it the 25th maybe?
Well, so it's a whole it's a whole series?
It's the documentary is like I'm assuming it's going to be like an hour or so of like a straight just documentary about Florida bonsai. Should be pretty cool. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, these guys, they're just as John Knock of On Banning paved the way for tropical bonsais in America and around the world, for that matter, because
they taught everywhere else.
Yeah, and
especially people like Rob Kempinski. He's been all over the place.
Oh, geez.
Rob Kempinski is definitely worth looking up if you guys want to go over there and check him out. I actually interviewed him on my podcast as well. I can't remember what episode that was, but that was last year sometime. I was fortunate to run into Rob at the national show last year as well. And
where was that? Oh,
the national show in Rochester. Yep. And he was really cool. He entered a Australian pine that he ended up actually selling at the show, like on the spot. It's kind of interesting. But he had this raft style Australian pine that was from Florida that was really well done. It was very cool.
You know, at some point those Australian pines were illegal to they still are illegal to sell.
They're evasive, very evasive.
Which means, listen, so when you say that, like there's trees, Evan, that we're not even entertaining. And I'm finding that the invasive ones perhaps might have the right
More
stuff.
value.
Yeah, if they're invasive, that means you can knock them down, stomp them, kick them, hit them while they're down, and not even water them, and then come back a year later and add some water, and they grow.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of those species in Florida. This is a pretty aggressive grower. Like I know that you told me you had a chapelera one time that was like in someone's ditch that they didn't want anymore.
No, it was growing out of their septic system.
Yep, yeah, it was just there.
I was there. It's like it was huge. It took up like the whole room here.
Yeah,
it was about 6 feet tall. You know, there was an excavator out there, and I asked.
Yeah, you were like,
Henry,
why not?
It's like he said, "You want this?" I'd cut it down to a stump and put it in a box and shipped it home.
Yeah, we're in bonsai, and if we find something that we would like to turn into a bonsai tree, I mean, like you said, if there's an excavator or somebody who's got a good shovel, I mean, it usually just happens there on the spot. So I'm going to make some crown adjustments up here. So you're still working on that section there, and so I'm figuring we're going to cap it off. So yeah, so this is a secondary tree right here. So I left this for the crown of this tree.
Ooh, that looks good.
And then we come up here and it's like, is this too much?
That's too much.
How far back do you think that needs to go?
Let's get this area done,
Okay.
and it should be relative to that.
Yeah, because I'm cutting off some really, really thick pieces that were just allowed to grow out and make knuckles and knots.
And it wasn't intentional.
It's just
everything is just neglect, so to speak.
Yeah.
But sometimes that type of neglect, when you leave it, we're inclined, bonsai people are inclined to stay on top of their trees, make them look good all the time. They want to look, like if somebody's going to come to your house, they're going to run out there and prune everything and weed everything. But the fact is that sometimes you just got to let them grow, recharge the battery.
Yeah. So this is not a bad thing, but it does give us the opportunity to do a really good restyling on this tree.
And it also, it beefed it up. All this superfluous growth.
It's gotten way bigger than it would otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, if you were to keep it perfectly pruned all the time, it would never reach this level
Not
of
a chance.
giant knobby branches. And then if you guys are seeing like how it's kind of set up here where it's like, oh, that's kind of weird and ugly, a little bit of wire goes a long ways. So now that you're here, I'm thinking that it needs to be cut here first and then here. That's what I'm looking at.
Okay, so this is what's weird. Okay, if you look at it, come around here, Evan, that you could see this is the older piece.
Yep.
And this is an extension line, but it's in the right place. But that's one of those water branches that just like took off and it got there.
Yeah, you do the thing. That's what I thought.
Yes.
If you see that right there, guys, see how there's a bunch of growth coming out of that one spot? It's creating what's called what I call a knuckle. It's a lot of inverse taper. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's like upwards of almost 20 branches coming out of this one spot. And what looks good on a bonsai is whenever the branches, say, start large and they taper down into smaller segments, and you'll never really get there with this. They'll be covered in scars. It'll just be a nightmare to kind of weed through and get it right. Just to kind of close that thought on cutting this big ugly piece off of that branch, this will make an amazing cutting. So even though this doesn't seem like anything right now, if you put this in soil and root this and then let everything here explode, you won't get this tree now. You could get this tree in 30 years maybe, but you can get a great tree out of this in 5, 10 years. You can get something really cool.
You know what's amazing? Even though it took 30 years for this tree to get to this point, or a little longer, if somebody like you grows it and does it right, you could do that. Have something this big easily in 5 years. However, you're not going to have that character.
Yeah, you're not going to have
that takes a lot of beating up and pounding and cutting to get to that.
And this is something that we call in the biz, in the bonsai world, we call it mochokome, which is the Japanese word for old bonsai that can't be shown without time. Without the passage of time, you can't create.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Time in the pot. Like there's so many. We have all types of ways to artificially age trees to make a very young tree look very old, but it only goes so far. Let's just get rid of that crossing root, because look what a crossing root will do. It doesn't take long.
If you want to clean this up real quick.
Just a little bit. That's that one and that one. And I think that was the 2 wires, Evan.
Well, there's one back here. So the wire down here originally was to hold this tree in the container. It doesn't really need that anymore. But when we go to repot this tree,
why? Because it didn't have any roots.
Originally, it didn't have roots. But when we're done with it after this repot, it will need these tie-down wires again. But for now, we're removing these wires because they're going to prevent us from slipping out of the pot here. Oh, okay. So you should be able to.
Okay, you hold.
Yep, you should be able to hoist it out.
No, you're going to have to pull back on the pot.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? You have a knife. We need to take a knife and go all the way around it.
Yep. So let's set it back down. So this happens whenever a tree gets really root bound. It's literally hugged up against the sides
and
here.
It has a lip. This pot lips in, and that's like having 2x4s under a lip. All right, we gotta cut a little more.
Okay. It's always so entertaining to see that.
And you know what? That makes me think this is definitely a decent Japanese pot.
Yeah, because you chipped it with that a little. No, you didn't chip it, but you
I hit
hit
it.
Yeah. There we go. After a couple of moments of I guess you can say manhandling the whole tree and getting the container away from this tree, is that the pot had a little bit of a curve, an inside curve, so it was difficult for me and Guy to get in there. So what we did, we might show this. We don't want it. This is not the way that you should do it, especially if you're new to bonsai. But Guy took a chainsaw, had to free up the space here because it's pure wood right here. So this guy's going to need to be pruned anyway with an electric chainsaw that he's going to use.
That's right.
And then we're going to go back with pruning tools. But this is not standard procedure for repotting bonsai.
No, I mean,
this is extreme case.
Yeah.
But we're going to go back to what is necessary to keep this tree healthy and happy. It may seem a little extreme, but like we were saying earlier, this is what you need to do to get it back into health.
To rejuvenate this tree. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine how much. That's wood. That's solid. It doesn't take long for if a tree's healthy, well, then it's certainly gonna get locked up in the pot. I mean, if this would have just, after 6 years of not repotting, would have just came right out the pot, something would have been wrong.
Something's wrong, yeah. That's what I tell a lot of people that are new into bonsai. If your tree is not actively growing, something's not right. The tree should be moving resources all the time. It should be extending new growth, growing new leaves, or thickening branches, or growing new roots. If none of those things are happening and you have complete standstill, your tree is not happy.
You might have a pot for another tree.
Yeah, exactly. You might have to either say your condolences or jump into action. So,
and the latter is the way you want to go.
Yeah. You want to take care of these things earlier. Let's see. I'm just trying to get
I think you got the wires off of this over here.
Yeah. I'm pulling drainage screen at the bottom. I'm just trying to get this wire out right here.
You got pliers, maybe?
Yeah. There we go.
Because you want that wire out of there, because it will dull your tools when you're pruning.
Yep. And so I did a repotting on a sea hibiscus a little while back on some reels that was recorded by our team here. And so this is just going to be an extreme case here, whereas that was a lot more simplistic. So what we're going to start doing here, you said you wanted to cut a lot of this root back. Do you want to take...
No, I want to use that. I want to use the chainsaw. Hey, but while it's on my mind, before I forget about it, you know this forest that I have of neurifolias?
Yeah.
Both of those forests were the bottoms of this tree.
There you go.
Even
you made
the
a
one
giant
on the
root
rock,
cutting.
it got cut off and just threw it in the pot and turned it into a forest.
Yep, he made a giant root cutting to make that forest, yeah. So me and Guy are at this point now where we have defoliated, we've cut major roots back that were causing issues with the overall health of the tree. And now this is where the special part of bonsai happens, where it's on the chopping block. So this is the time to reassess, and we can do slight redesigns, slight choices that will improve the future of this tree's, either its image or its health or whatever we need to do to bring it to that next stage. And one of those things is choosing a new front for this tree, potentially because, like you said, Guy, it's been in the pot for a long time, and so it's gotten thick in a lot of places where previously when you potted it, it was not like this. So it looks like originally, based off of what we had, the front was like right off of this knot right here.
I think it was. Let's give it a turn.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. So And one principle that you've told me in the past is, and you might agree with this still, is if you want to find the front, you always find find the back first, and then turn it around.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yep. So where is the ultimate back of this tree to you still?
Let's stand up and see what the back is.
Yeah. Because I mean, this is one of those trees where it's rare that most sides of this tree look pretty good. There's some pretty good perspectives on it.
I can't say this is my favorite. I can't say with certainty.
I kind of like putting that bigger section, that secondary trunk back, just building a little bit more depth to that.
And gives you more taper.
Yep.
Instead of...
Yeah,
okay, so when you do that, you're cheating, you're lying.
Okay.
If you're trying to hide it, but sometimes bonsai is hiding.
It's hiding little imperfections.
So
see right there, it's just a little too broad. Shows off all the imperfections and the taper and stuff there.
It seems like it's wider here. That's just typically the way it happens.
Yep.
So what you're saying is, yeah.
Right there, because the line here
feeds right up there.
And then this is a little big, but that's okay, because that'll be towards the back.
And then when you wire this sucker, you'll put everything where you want it.
Exactly. So
okay,
just turn a little bit more. And just because we find a front that might be ideal, we're going to keep looking just in case there's something we missed. So if your tree is leaning away from you, that is not inviting it, is kind of where we were insinuating that.
And sometimes it's a matter of just tilting it forward to make it do it. But
yeah,
I think that we need negative space. We don't want just all roots in our face, right?
Yep. And then this carries us through the design. The Nembari looks nice and wide here, so we're going to reserve this as the front for now.
I like that.
Okay. So let's go ahead and get this turned over, and you can rake out all the stuff on the bottom and fix a lot of that bottom stuff that we have. Just a pointer on tools for you guys really quick. So whenever you're working through trees, you always want to have your top tools. So your tools that you only use on the top side of your tree. So your sharpest shears, your sharpest branch cutters, your sharpest saws.
I never heard that. I use all my tools.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for a bonsai professional, it is challenging to have those tools separated. But ideally for our bonsai practitioners that are getting into this, make sure you have root pruning tools separate from your top pruning tools, because what Guy's talked about here with those particular scissors, these are general purpose scissors. So here in the trade of bonsai, we have scissors that serve that purpose, both top and bottom, and then we will part ways with those scissors quickly because they're not going to be our Japanese grade or antique Masakunis that we really value. So just as a disclaimer there, guys, if you see us use top and bottom shears in the same place, that's just because that's the way that we do it.
It's just necessity now.
It's going to be especially for the way we're working on this tree.
Evan, let's flip it around, because I think after we do a little more pruning, I'm not happy about this area. It's like, how do you even get water under the tree right there?
Yeah.
We got to get rid of some more of this. You know what? That looks pretty darn good. Look, how do you feel about these? Are big hunks, but it is what it is.
Yep. So I'm going to...
We should hose it off, Evan.
These are just...
Yeah, I was concerned about so much wood still, but... I mean, this tree's got a great Nembari. It's got a lot of wood.
Yep. It just needs to be cut back to nice clean cuts here.
All right, wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Look here.
Yep. I mean...
Seems like still that's very long, and if that might look a little, if that were gone, or you talk to me.
I mean, since this is the front, I don't mind this. I think it actually adds interest to that.
Okay.
To that root. Yeah. I mean, because you got so much going on here, you need to balance that.
Okay, but look, how are you going to get that under the soil? If this is your soil line. That's like,
well,
and you have all the room. There is all that room.
Yep. Because once we go on the bottom here and we clean out the bottom a little bit more, we'll get down. We still got some bottom stuff to clean up.
We really could take a little plate off of there.
Yep. You want to go ahead and try to do that real
I
quick?
think that might be the move.
Yep.
And the reason I want to plate this, go further, is just it's still a whole lot of wood that's taking up valuable space for new roots.
Yep.
And it's going, like some trees, you have to be careful. You can't go as hard. Some trees are finicky and subject to failing if you go too hard on the roots. Not the case here.
With ficuses,
with the ficus tree, pretty much you have carte blanche. So I'm going to start right there. I'm going to go right through that root.
Okay. Like right here.
It feels like I know. What did I do?
Nothing.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, that's
that gives us a pivot point.
Exactly.
That should be plenty enough.
Yep. Since this tree doesn't have any roots to chopstick down into, because quite frankly, we cut a lot of stuff back.
There's no chopsticking.
There's just going to be place it and then put the soil around the root system, and then the tree's going to reach into the soil. So since we know the front, we're going to go ahead and place it and make sure that the soil settles properly.
Ooh, this tree's going to be so happy.
So
yes, indeed.
So I think we were right.
Right, looks perfect.
Right there. So you want to get the rest of that soil, Guy, and
yes,
dump it in there, and then we'll move the soil around the roots and make sure
pull it out of there for me.
Yeah.
Just enough so you get it level, and so you could tie it down.
Yep.
And so that is sticking up in here. See him?
Yep. So speaking of soil, so we're using pumice, lava, and then a shale clay called True Grow here for our soil mix. This will facilitate lots of moisture, lots of nutrient exchange between the fine roots of the tree, and just moving oxygen through this root system will further encourage that too, so we don't have any clogs. And what?
Not oxygen, gases.
Gases.
Because it's not oxygen unless you got one of those Energen things.
Okay. Well, yeah, a gas. If we're going to be all scientific about it.
The exchange of gases and water are so important. Now, wow, cheese and pizza. This is going to be a very, very... Hey, before you do it, double check, Evan. Make sure you're happy.
Yeah.
With exactly where your front is. Stand back and take a peek.
Yeah. I was lining the wires up to make sure that they were going to touch, which they will. And they're going to also hit certain parts of the root, so I'm keeping that in mind as well.
And you know, these wires, you don't have to hide them.
No, they're going to come off.
They're going to come off in a couple months.
Oh, dude, that looks
I mean, I think that looks like perfection.
Yeah. And once I get some wire on this thing, it'll be really nice. Okay. Let's get it.
So you're thinking about going, yep, just like that.
Side by side. So whenever I wire down trees, I call this side by side. A lot of people make the mistake and they'll run their wire from this side and this side. That makes a cross. Mm-hmm. When you do that, that's one anchor point. That is not good for the tree, because then I'll be able to take this tree and move it. Side by side, like this, pushes the tree down directly over the soil and gives us full contact with the tree to the pot. So
I'm coming all the way. So I'm going to pull as much as there's no slack in there because we made the wires right. I'm going to come way back here.
Just going through and troweling down the soil here with my piece of wood, so I make sure everything's nice and flat. I might even go in and take a little bit of soil right from the edge here so that the water doesn't break the rim of the pot right there. But I mean, I think it's going to be fine. There's plenty of space in there for new roots to facilitate and get the tree back to health. So now the aftercare of this, now that it's completely stripped of its leaves, it's been cut back really hard, being a tropical plant, go straight back in the sun and water it.
Right back full sun. That's a big mistake. People want to put it right into a greenhouse or in a shady area. No, straight full sun.
Yep.
what I'm finding is that I'm liking to do with this soil is I put caps on all of mine.
Yes.
And it could be just peat moss, sphagnum moss. You like sphagnum moss, I think you can, and it makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, this top zone could get a little drier, and the tree's less apt to want to invest way up there. But if you put a cap up there, it'll take every part of the pot zone, all the zones, and invest.
Yeah. And me and Carmen have talked about this on our podcast show, Little Things for Bonsai People, where that cap or that layer of sphagnum moss is to help facilitate feeder roots in that first couple of, like that first inch to half inch of soil there. Otherwise, like you said, it'll dry up.
Yeah, and you could come back 2 years later and say, when you see somebody stick their finger, see if they need to water their tree 2 years after they repot, something's wrong.
This should be full of roots.
It should be just full of roots.
Cool. So we're going to take this outside and water it, but thanks for hanging out and working on this awesome tree and repotting it.
Man.
And we're going to do some updates of this later on. So what will be about 2 or 3 years from now, this thing will be drastically different.
Yikes, can't even imagine.
Yep. But
no, hey, Evan, a pleasure, and thank you.
Yep, definitely.
Thank you for having an interest in making them better.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what it's all about, right?
And we'll continue to make more for sure.